Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Yashwendra Singh, Executive Editor of ETCIO, and I'll be moderating this topical session on leveraging the SASE environment to maximize network security, organized by ETCIO, McAfee, and Hitachi Systems Microclinic. SASE, or Secure Access Service Edge, is emerging as an important model, an important architecture for enterprises. This is because businesses of all sizes require a security framework that enables security and fast cloud adoption for employees as well as partners and customers. The current changes to our work lead to an increased need for robust networking and network security solution. With physical office boundaries slowly fading away, it is now more important than ever to have secure access to critical applications from any part of the world. SASE converges networking and network security into a single cloud-delivered offering to provide guaranteed secure access to your applications, whether they are hosted privately or in the cloud. The SASE framework allows secure and fast access to the internet, SaaS applications, cloud applications, and private data center resources to support workforce mobility, digital transformation, and edge computing. In this session, we have top enterprise technology leaders who will throw more light on the various aspects of SASE. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. We have with us Mr. Mukesh Jain, CTIO and VP Insights and Data, Capgemini India, Mr. Milind Mungale, CISO and EVP IT and SDL, Ms. Puneet Kaur Kohli, CTO and CIO, Manappuram Finance, Mr. Mayank Bhargava, CIO Pramerica Life Insurance, Mr. Jayaprakash Sharma, Executive Vice President, Technology Operations, InfoEdge, Mr. Ramsi Ponakanti, Regional CTO and Head of Technical Sales, India and SARC at McAfee, and last but not the least, Mr. Anuj Gupta, CEO, Hitachi Systems Microclinic. Welcome, panelists. So it's ladies first, so I'll start with this Kohli first. Ma'am, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought sweeping changes in the business and technology landscape. We've seen brick and mortar education institutions imparting education today digitally. So, complete business models have been turned upside down. How has this impacted your business? How are you aligning with this new normal when it comes to your vertical?
So this COVID-19 is definitely the new normal. I can understand that. When you talk about the pre-COVID days, definitely, IT was definitely playing a big role in making business engagements or giving business continuity to its critical processes. Irrespective, working from home was a concept which was already there in the organizations. But coming with the COVID-19 situation, it teaches you a new era where, you feel that, the businesses have to be run in a new approach, basically. So IT has to be at the forefront to enable certain key processes in terms of to handle the COVID-19 situations. Now, when you talk about how one has to adapt, definitely we at our organization were very well geared up, because 1 year or 2 years back also, because we were in Kerala and we were having all these flood situations, and also our 100% DR and the business uptime was running through the DRs only for all those 15 or 20 odd dates where we were being impacted. Now when you say the transaction that has to run from the operation side, so be amalgamation or a consolidation of a convergence of a business, people, process and technology is something which is fully led by this complete business continuity process. And BCMS is something where, it is already as per the regulatory framework also that, under COVID-19 situations, how the CIOs or the business leaders are combating with these situations. So for us, we did not have any challenges in terms of meeting our requirements, because we had all the digital gold loans, we had the digital worker. Even during this COVID situations also, we were able to disburse almost more than around 360 crores of business through online channels. So in fact, our online way where, the disbursement up to the doorsteps was also being handled. Then during this time, what we found that we had a commitment where the team's perspective also needs to be increased. Even if the employees, the business engagements comes out in terms of more and more automations, the IT also has to be well geared up to meet those timelines. It has to be in terms of an over deliver. So people have to over deliver, and at the same time, as a CIO, you have to have a engagement where business comes up with their requirements to meet the timelines, to feel that we should be more engaged with our customers. We should be giving a wow experience or a personalized experience through digital
Sure.
channels. Yeah.
Sure.
And apart from that, IT has to run at the back end to give all these automations in place. So as an IT leader, you have to convince the business, you have to maintain the customer engagements in terms of giving these tools, in terms of digitization. At the same times, you have to see as a leader what kind of employee productivity has, without harassing them or giving them empowerment. You have to maintain that equilibrium between IT. So there,
Sure.
as an IT leader, you have to work as a business leader, you also work as a mother, you have to work as a family member, and at the
Right.
same time you have to see that who are your star performance, and keep on empowering your team members to give their to empowerment, and keep their aura always high. So this role has really made people to think 360 degree, or I can say a 360 degrees, 720 degrees, rather, in terms of what was committed for 6 weeks has to be committed in the weeks have been consolidated into days, and days have been consolidated further into hours have come into minutes. So that is the kind of new change, or the new normal is which is
Sure.
IT is anticipating at this point of time. So we were
Sure.
able to meet up all these lines, and we are well geared up in all these era.
Great. Sure,
Yeah.
ma'am. Great to know that you were, on top of the situation. So from
Yes.
finance, let me now move to ITS. Mr. Mukesh Jain, sir, how are you dealing with this scenario? What impact has it made on your vertical? Bringing about enterprise-wide collaboration, looking at security, all that has changed because of this pandemic. Your take on this, sir?
Yeah. So when we ran into this issue, right, we are talking about almost 4 months back, exactly around the same time frame when this happened. So one of the first thing we did, okay, fine, will the team be able to cope up with this? Can they do this? Because my team is usually very junior, because I love taking people directly from college and I have it in my team. So now with those people who are not worked remotely, who need to have face-to-face interaction and all, that was my biggest fear. Okay, with that in mind, I started, okay, fine, let us start doing this. As simple as shipping desktop to their home, or they didn't have enough laptop, and I'm sure right how much challenge it was to be able to get laptops. But then the first element was, okay, fine, I want to make sure people see each other, so face to face. But it was a disaster, because of course we all know everybody start video, the network bandwidth was not suitable. So a lot of this step-by-step process we have to go to get to be at the position that we can do face-to-face video calls. The three things which we able to do was, first is, let's enable them to be able to access email at least. That's the first part. Okay, so some changes require the security part and all. And the important part was, as a chief technology innovation officer, was how I can use artificial intelligence to detect intrusion, to detect where the requests are coming from. We know only certain location the request should come out, but we also know people have gone to their hometowns. How do they access from those? So all those parts, fine tuning was happening, I would say, for roughly about 5 days. And it would have been a big chaos, but it was not, while making sure the productivity is there at a decent level.
Sure.
To my surprise, of course, the team did very well, much better than I expected, able to collaborate and all. And now it become more important for everything to be transparent, right? Everything on email, like point down 1, 2, 3, 4, fine, collaboration tools and so on and so forth. The third element, which was becoming a little bit challenging, is how do we secure my code? Okay, we had good tools and techniques to be able to get the check-ins and everything, but at the same time don't want somebody to just take on the code. So some of the principles done there, wherein I can bifurcate the code, the versioning and all of those part was done, which actually helped us a lot. But then the fourth part was about how do we make sure people are always available? When I say always available, I don't expect 24 hours, but at least the 8-9 hours when people are expected to work. How do we make sure that happens, compared to when we physically see each other, we know what's working on and not working.
Sure.
But I think over a period of time, people have gone through those, and the systems and the expectation of and all have become more aggressive now. As ma'am have said, that not about weeks and days and hours, it's about minutes nowadays, which has helped.
Right.
And I think if I have to tell one point, be more explicit and interacting with people when you're doing this. And the second part is online security has to be there. Without that,
Sure.
this remote working will be a disaster. These are the two
Sure.
things which have made us successful and at a pace where we can continue to deliver.
Sure, sir. Sure. Like you've been, leveraging innovative technologies to detect intrusion, for instance, in your network. Coming to the CISO on the panel, Mr. Milind, sir, your thoughts here. How are you aligning with the new normal?
So in the new normal, primarily if you look 3 quadrants or 2 quadrants, and they were divided into 9 blocks. At one end, you had your customers whom you had to give service. Other end, you had your employees whom you have to enable for working and make them productive. And third end was the leadership or the management, which also had to gear up to this new way of working, where they have to get feedback, provide necessary guidance to their people, which was all this while very easy, call in your cabin or meet in a meeting room and handle all the issues. But now getting all the people together on one video conference, someone's connection goes off, someone's voice is not coming properly, someone's video is not working, someone has got a lot of noise in the background, all those challenges, and in that you have to manage the work. The second part of it was the infrastructure, availability of infrastructure. You would know traditionally, most of the Indian companies are a big fan of desktops. Now, someone just now said that we deliver desktops at home. That is a very unusual thing to do. Office and desktops are something which are very tightly bundled to each other. And it is not expected that the desktops have to be made working in the residence of the employees. But people had to do that. But the second challenge was the second aspect of it was the support. Just sending a desktop to someone's home is not enough. He should be able to connect it. He should be able to make it operational on Wi-Fi LAN or Ethernet LAN, whatever way he has got connection. If someone doesn't have any router or connection and they are operating on the mobile, then that desktop needs to have a Wi-Fi connector so that it can take that hotspot connection of the mobile. All these things were the second challenge. And the third most important aspect was your customers. Now, customers are used to making call to your call center. Call center cannot work from home on day one, week one. For that sake, even in some places for the whole month, call center could not work from home. So where do they call? And even if they call, what would they get? They would get something called a recorded message. That due to COVID-19, we are non-operational. However, you are requested to send email on so and so email ID to get your problem resolved. And for the organization like ours, where we are processing PAN applications, and PAN applications comes in millions. Every week we process we used to process close to 1 million PAN applications. If there are even 5% or 2% of the people have a problem and they were getting resolved by the call center, now they are sending email. Just imagine the infrastructure. What is the kind of an email structure you have to have, and what is the kind of people you require to address all those emails? So on one axis, you had your employees, your management, and your customers. On the other axis, you had the infrastructure, the security around that infrastructure, because everyone have to connect to your office remotely, and support that you give for that infrastructure as well as to the customers. So arranging these, I would call it as a COVID Rubik Cube. Arranging this COVID Rubik Cube and making sure that all the colors get aligned on all the sides properly itself was a biggest challenge for not only us, but almost all the organizations where IT and security was a prime important.
Sure, sir.
Few people had a problem with regards to their processes, but fortunately, few people already had gone way ahead on the digital aspects, had their BCP and DRP already ready, like ours. We had our BCP, DRP, and digitalization of the organization processes at a very matured stage. So we did not have much of a problem. Fortunately, just about 3 months back, we had even launched the ePAN. So instead of waiting for your PAN card, not only PAN number, but the image of your PAN card would also reach to your email ID, was something which came very handy. So I would like to say that we addressed this situation by putting that 3x3 Rubik Cube in place.
Okay, great, sir. That's a very nice example, comparing the situation with Rubik's Cube. Great. Moving on to Mr. Mayank Bhargava. Sir, besides all the challenges that we talked about, it's also about skilling all the users, because, everybody is today working on different devices, different environments, different circumstances. How have you, overcome this challenge? How have you ensured that your organization is aligned with the new normal and it's business as usual?
Yeah, I think the first and the foremost challenge was around the change management itself. Getting mentally accustomed to this fact that you would not really be meeting your colleagues, face to face or in person, and you will have to make do with interacting with them over some kind of a collaboration tool, which at times for quite a few people was pretty inconvenient. But those who had been using it for a while and had become quite adept or effective in leveraging technology were able to navigate through this situation much better. But when you kind of looked at both these segments of people, you could see that there is a huge gap that existed. And the first and the foremost part was for us to make everybody comfortable around this and ensure that they get to see each other working on MS Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, and ensure that their work doesn't get impacted. Besides this, the other challenge that came in was that we didn't really had enough laptops, because there were quite a few desktop users that were there in the organization. So people kind of experimented, or we thought that let's try experimenting with the tablets or the mobile devices that people have, and can we make them productive using those tablets till the time we actually put together a BYOD setup. So attempting on tablets, which was largely for the sales folks for them to reach out to their customers or the new prospects, to the the training team or the call center folks, to kind of make them operational on the tablets, and then eventually moving everybody, those who did not have the laptops, onto the BYOD setup that was created during the start of the lockdown period. Made things better, but it did go through a bit of a journey, getting people to become comfortable around it. Also, navigating through the challenges of not having great connectivity at home, or dealing with any kind of power cuts, which nobody could really predict. I think those were some of the initial challenges that we kind of had to go through. But I think in about 2 to 3 weeks time, most of the people were able to become pretty effective on the devices or the technologies that they were using. But somewhere I think, that sense of actually having a human touch or something that which they were able to actually enjoy working in an office-like environment was seemed to be missing. And I think that is something that people will have to become used to. While I think the technology side, I think there is some work which is being done to give it a more office-like environment. But those are things one can't completely replace. Operating from home. I think by and large, that was the key challenges that we faced, and navigated them, using the methods that I mentioned.
Great, Mr. Bhargava. Mr. Sharma, your take on this? A lot of challenges everybody has spoken about, but one thing that appears to be a lot more challenging is to ensure laptops for everybody, for the entire workforce working from home. Did you also encounter the same challenges? What were your experiences during this time?
First of all, thank you so much for providing this platform. Certainly the way like the rest of the people shared, it is COVID-19 has given us a new normal. Somewhere like a very old saying, it says like, the digital transformation was all about like Airbnb, Fab, Ola, Oyo, and all those kind of things. But to be very honest, real test of digital transformation is something like COVID-19 has taught us. We also, being a technology organization, certainly like we also face some of the similar challenges in the initial days. But to be very honest, like, this was a more of a learning for the management, where I used to say like, okay, work from home wasn't policy earlier. BCP was a policy earlier, but now we need to look the whole concept as a strategy, because like fragmented workforce, distributed workforce is the new reality. That's where like we also prepared ourselves. And being a technology company, trust me, like the technology was not much of the hurdle for during these times for us. But certainly the here and there, like, to realize the real use of the licenses comes into the picture when we practically gone into it. So I would also try to bucketize the similar way like earlier Milind has done, and Mayank, Mukesh, everybody has done that. So, first and the foremost thing was like, how do you ensure like your non-tech workforce doesn't get shaken up with the new technology era kind of thing? Because like they are the most strugglers, because most of the times like they used to struggle to even search or open a file from a file server. I mean, which used to be located in the office network itself. Now they have to connect over the VPN. So, many such kind of awareness session was something which we had focused earlier. So since we were a little better prepared, I would say, certainly not with this mask. But with awareness was one of our core focus in terms of like non-tech stuff, where they should not face much of the challenges in their day-to-day normal activity. We had given that platform to them. And then we had started focusing specifically on the collaboration, how to use the collaboration tools, do some kind of like, quick, just before the lockdown, quick mock sessions within the office itself, even if like, the normal meetings has been conducted. Then the typical challenges, like the other folks said, like the call center was one of the challenges. So call center can't move because like traditionally we are running it from the on-prem devices. So, we were knowing about the concept, but to moving to the cloud, how easy, how managed, cost from a cost standpoint, from the agent usability standpoint, all those things has been was something, a journey which we had gone through. Similarly, laptops was good part is like, at least for our organization, laptops was enough for the tech stuff. We had also faced similar challenges, specifically on the operations where the call center comes into the picture, where we had arranged the VDIs, some of the personal laptops also has been utilized during that time, where the application re-imaging and all those things has been done from the IT staff. Trust me, like this COVID-19 actually brought more than anything. They had this COVID-19 has realized, given a sense within the management that truly the IT stuff, which was working as in back-end stuff, is now running the complete show. Great. From the security standpoint, like the way like the rest of the people says, all those places, like we were better prepared since we are already an online organization. We can talk about in subsequent discussions.
Great. Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you so much for those inputs. Vamsi, Mr. Vamsi, your take on this. You've heard all the CIOs, CISOs talking about their challenges. What do you feel is the new normal, and how can enterprises align with it?
Well, see, I think there's been enough for focus on the new normal. The reality is that people are going to be remote. There's going to be work from anywhere as a concept as we move forward, and organizations have really opened up to that sort of a strategy going forward. I keep hearing from CIOs that I speak with, or organizations that I speak with, on how they're re-strategizing their entire office building setups and so on and so forth, or even a spread strategy in terms of tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So there's multiple implications, not just technology or human resources, but also in terms of real estates and facilities and all of that going forward. So, I think we're at a very important point from a technology perspective, where the future is going to be that much more nimble. The technology will become the enabler to Jay's point that he was just mentioning, saying that, technology, people are at the forefront of making businesses run 24/7 at this point in time. Well, the businesses had technology as a back-end office until this point in time. Technology is now the business driver. Technology is now at the forefront of making a business successful, resilient, as well as being embraced and speed to market, etc. And being a security company at the heart of it, how do we go hand in hand, right? There's a very interesting discussion that came up yesterday. The lines between traditional IT and security are now going to blur. So if you know what I mean, where networks were present and where security is present, all of that is going to become a very homogeneous sort of a conversation right now. We will not differentiate between access, security and access will go hand in hand, whether it is for applications, whether it is for users, their identity and so on. So I think we're at a very important point from a technology perspective. And, I'm very excited about the kind of innovations that are currently happening to make this a possibility going forward.
Sure. Thank you, Vamsi. Anuj, what's your perspective here? Do you echo the panelists' sentiments here? Your take, please.
I think we've covered more or less all our challenges, what everyone has faced. So I would like to start with saying that, we are in the same storm, but in different boats, right? So we have customers here who have been having their entire challenge of having the organization up and running, and we as service providers or system integrators were actually in a different boat, facilitating all of that was required. Great learning. I think last 4 months has really opened our eyes. It has given dimensions to business which we never thought of. Things we thought were never going to be possible in India. Today, we are seeing that as reality. And I would say COVID has fast-tracked the entire digitalization, innovation, accepting work from home. We thought it was always for the West. No, it is for us as well. And more than that, I think the whole way technology is getting adapted. And as we go forward, we will see there'll be a huge change in the way business will consume technology, the consumerization of IT. And I think as an organization, we feel that it's a big catch-up race that we need to do. And I'm sure as customers also, we are all feeling what is it that next we need to invest? Where is it that we need to invest? What Vamsi spoke about, identity is going to be one of the most key important things. We are out of our comfort zone. We are not sitting in our offices. We are not in the ring-fenced setup of security. Now we are all remote, working from home in a very different environment, different way. So extremely important how we adapt and cascade this whole security framework. It's going to be an interesting time. I think let's hear from the panel in terms of what are the challenges, and as an organization or as a system integrator, it's great to hear you guys, because the more we hear, the more we understand we are on the right path to help you guys to work on in these tough times.
Sure, Anuj. Great. So let's hear more from our enterprise technology leaders here. Mr. Bhargav, I'll come back to you. Sir, it's beyond doubt that IT budgets would be under tremendous pressure, in times to come. Probably CIOs will have to create a prioritized list of projects that need to be cancelled or even delayed. Yet, despite all this, I'm sure digital transformation will continue unabated. So how do you think CIOs can balance the two? Cost cutting on the one hand, yet ensure that digital transformation keeps continuing. Mr. Bhargava.
Yeah, I think you have a valid point there, that costs or the budgets are under a lot of pressure, because I think the businesses are going through a bit of a tough time. At the same time, any stream of business or any area which can be made more efficient, can be made more productive, can potentially be created as a revenue generating opportunity, or can bring down your cost, that is what is going to get attention. So I would say that the budgets possibly would end up becoming reallocated to the initiatives which now need more attention. There is going to be a fight for the capital, no two thoughts about it. Some of the things that were kind of taken for granted or were being just considered, this is something that we always have been doing and should continue to do. Maybe those are the things which will get questioned. But all of those budgets most likely would find way, or get reallocated towards the initiatives which need attention. And those are going to be in the space of digital transformation, accelerating your journey towards the cloud, making your perimeter more secure, opening up any new lines of business for reaching out, through distributors to newer segments of customers, making your services much more nimble or agile to the market dynamics or the needs of the customers. Anything that one is doing in this space, depending on the industry or the organization that one is in, would gain priority. Anything which is potentially, or has been just kind of a run the business kind of stuff, or something which has a possibility of getting automated, will undergo an automation. I think that's where the businesses would look at, how do I prioritize, where do I put my available budget into, and not necessarily kind of just look at cutting down the budgets by a single stroke. I don't think so that is going to be the case.
Sure. Ms. Kohli, your thoughts here. How can CIOs do more with less? Everybody's talking about probably deploying RPA that could improve digital workflows and lower expenses, or agile teams, DevOps, that could also
Yeah,
yield
yeah.
visible benefits here more quickly. Your thoughts?
Yes, Yashwindra. Yes, Yashwindra. We also have a very good pool of new age technologies, and it's really helped us out in these pandemic times. So, what I fully agree with Mr. Bharadwaj that and the other panel members who are my co-panelists. So, the time has come when there is a very big need, to basically deliver and basically capitalize on the process innovations, basically, and reprioritize on the backlog of your projects, basically deliver extraordinary delivery of things which will capitalize more on like reprioritization of the executive priorities, and more to deliver on the revenue model and the customer engagement going forward. So I think so to do more, we can have new age technologies like RPA has really given us, we are fully on UI paths, and it has really given us a very good model in terms of reprioritizing our things. We have almost now more than 60 to 70 odd processes in the business odd kind of thing where the complete prioritization end to end has worked on these things. Then more of mobility operations end to end, you can say automations have taken place. The time has come where we have to protect our the running cost which we say on year basis. If there is some very high running cost which is on the capex, so time has come when the CIOs and CTOs along with their core teams have to see an alternate mechanisms to do how the more of pay as you use model in terms of cloud, all cloud automations, or in terms of agile, or in terms of reprioritizing, rethinking how these innovations can help in bridging the gap between the business and IT together. That is one thing. Then there are other areas where we have to do a normal process orientation for our key process governance committees can be formed in terms of in pandemic times where the automations, IT or business enablers and the end users feedback have to work in collaborations. So this is what we have adopted. Now when anything which we go live, unless the user feedback is not taken in terms of how was the customization done, and does it really meeting the business sense, then only with the go live and the live and close environment comes in our organization. We are doing that kind of a concept, and a business process discovery wherever ML or IoT has to play a very big role in terms of lot of automations, whether which technology will take which part. We are reprioritization our things in terms of all things. Apart from the skill set availability, we are taking a very steep effect where I'm taking on board some very, people, which is a campus recruitments where we go with a hybrid approach. We go with the build, transform and operate model. We are tying hands with the fintechs who comes with the good practices, does process discovery for us. And in terms, train our teams and leave, and our teams become self-sufficient to handle these, future engagements.
Right.
That is how
Great.
we are getting prepared.
Sure, ma'am. Vamsi, your thoughts here. Do more with less. Where do you think SASE fits in? Does it make sense for an architecture, a model like SASE, where CIOs can actually leverage it and do more with less?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just referring to the immediate conversation with what Ms. Puneet was saying, you've got to discover business processes and enable ultimately your technology to make business happen, right? That's one thing that we heard in the Goat business, what we just mentioned. But then take a slightly different example. One of the things that actually reinvented, and we saw a bunch of launches during this pandemic times, and that is the car industry. You've seen that essentially it has all come to an absolute halt. There's been a month and a half where there was absolutely zero sales. Then the economy was restarted. The factories were starting to get into production. People would go into assembly lines and so on. But until the end of the day, when the user actually walks in, goes to a showroom, buys the car and comes out, none of that back-end process is essentially going to be of any use whatsoever. So when that as an organization sits down and tries to identify where do I put my money first, where is the number one investment that is going to happen, when you go through that whole prioritization process, you realize that, everything is set in place, the supply chain is set in place, but the biggest challenge is for making the end buyer walk into a showroom to buy a car. And that's the problem that you have to solve right and foremost. And that's why you've seen a bunch of launches around, whether it's the high-end Mercedeses of the world or the Hyundais of the world, launch websites where you can actually buy, configure your car, build your own car, and actually buy it like something that you do on an Amazon or something like that. And when you do that transaction online, people will come in, they'll bring the car to your house, and then they'll show this is the color, and you can still make some changes on their handheld devices, and subsequently you buy that car and get it delivered at your doorstep. Now we're looking at that as an end user experience. The technology, everything else at the back end is what is actually enabling that to happen. When somebody decided that here are my $100 that I'm going to invest on this business process redesign, to Ms. Puneet's point, that business process redesign is happening at the touch point between the end buyer and the showrooms where that actually happens, and the rest of the supply chain is already in place. So how do you make that secure? How do you build out a business process that is driven by technology, serviced over the internet as a service people can configure, and how do you build it in a secure manner? Because the user will be supplying their documentation, the user will be applying for loans, so there's a connectivity to their bank, there's a credit check that happens at the back end. All of that has now become suddenly very online. You're trying to do it in a paperless manner. So this is where the real implication of even security frameworks such as SASE actually comes in, right? So at the end of the day, what is SASE? SASE is nothing but a good way to bring together your organization's internal applications and applications that are on the cloud and make them secure and make them accessible to people who need to use it. That's at the most abstract and vanilla level of explaining to somebody what SASE enables. So you've got to do with new investments from technology, new investments from security, but at the back end, tie them up with existing applications and existing business processes already in place. And this is where the best of the thing comes in. So you launch a cloud-based application, you tie it up with some application already in your data center, and you make them work and talk to both of them, each other over the internet. That's where it's happening. Even from a remote location where the bandwidth is low, you still have to keep the user's data secure. You still have to protect it. If somebody is sending their bank data over that web application that's built out and hosted on a web application somewhere, you still are protecting that whole thing. So there's data protection, there's identity protection, there's protection of the applications, and at the same time, you're protecting your data centers at the back. So this is the implication of what technology does when there's a process redesign. And this is where frameworks like SASE are actually helping in. And we've had a few conversations with several of these kind of customers, whether it's banks, whether it's in the manufacturing or ITES, because it touches everyone. And believe it or not, it touches the government as well in some way, because there's the centralized Vahan repositories and all where the RTOs are combined on a single network at the back end, and the number delivery and all of that happens online. So it's a good way of bringing everything together, and technology is solving that last mile problem of selling the car to the user. So just wanted to give that example.
Sure, Vamsi. Anuj, what's your thought here on this? How can the CIOs do the balancing act? And does SASE actually be the answer for all these ills here?
Again, I'll further add to, it's interesting times, right? Now we are suddenly not connecting from a ring-fenced, very, very secured office environment to a very completely unsecure home, remote towns, right? And people are connecting from various devices, be it cell phones, be it laptops, be it desktops, right? Now, in all of this, the biggest challenge is A is identity, B is security, C is, again, the user is sitting at home, but he wants the same experience that he gets at workplace. So if there is a ticket problem, if he has an issue with his laptop, he wants someone to come and resolve it. Now, in all of this, to get productivity up, give him the same experience, and at the same time have a secure, setup, I think it's extremely important that we look at SASE kind of framework. So we look at frameworks which will actually enable the entire mesh of on-cloud, on-prem, data center-based applications in a single holistic view. And for a user, it just is seamless in terms of it is as easy as he's accessing from office or he's accessing from home. So that's extremely important in the terms of framework. And I think the second biggest problem now, which all of us are facing, is the more and more people are working from home, identity is becoming a big problem. So our identity confirmation is extremely important. Is it the same guy logging in? Is it the right credentials? Is it the right person who's authorized to log in? And now that is again becoming a big problem. I think now more and more people sitting at home, people are looking at passwordless protection, they're looking at biometric-based authentication, they're looking at SASE frameworks. So I think next 6, 8, 9 months will really define the way technology is being consumed. Again, cloud-based or native cloud-based application, we are seeing a big rise there. Again, as a SI, we see a lot of organizations are adapting cloud so quickly because it is scalable, it is agile, and it is, extremely robust. So again, the moment you get into that kind of an environment, it's a new cloud security framework again. So it is a time when we will evolve, and I think in the next 6 months we will see a lot more evolution in terms of how this entire framework grows, scales, and then we'll have more adoption around it. Thank you.
Sure, Anuj. I'll come back to Mr. Mukesh Jain. Mr. Jain, Anuj just you touched about security as a critical aspect going forward, because a lot of employees are working from home. So while digital transformation, we all know creates competitiveness and agility, yet it also increases the threat surface of an enterprise. And with a lot of people working from home, it accentuates this. Your thoughts on this, sir? What do you think? What role could an architecture like SASE play here in helping CIOs, CISOs, and enterprises secure their crown jewels?
So I think there are two elements here. So I think the main point is, if whatever process we have, right? So always there's a fear that at any process of time, any place, there could be a leakage, there could be intrusion, and there could be some problem. I think the way we start thinking as a chief technology or innovation of information officers, we need to think what are the 5 places, what are the 7 places, what are the 10 places some problem can happen. And if there is some framework like this, probably we take less burden on us, and then able to outsource it to this particular tool which can do it for us. So the way I think here is, first of all, right, if you look at some of the Pokayoke concepts, means mistakes will not happen in the first place, or there will not be any area where somebody can attack. So I think starting with that concept, right, if I see the whole process and apply some of the lean principle, that do we need this process? Reducing it and then having somebody who is taking care of whole part definitely works better. That's the main element. The second element which I found is going more towards less dependence on the on-prem or hardware where things stay for long. For example, serverless architecture. For example, things which is we are talking more about cloud native elements. So when we have those elements, the validation is happening every time something we interact. So this is a place where I think framework like SASE probably will help and make it easier and less headache for some of the technology leaders to be always worried about those. That is what my take on this is right now.
Sure, sir. Mr. Sharma, I just read a report, it was published in May. It says there have been 192,000 coronavirus-related cyber attacks per week over the past 3 weeks, an increase of over 30% over previous weeks. And just to throw some more statistics at you, almost 20,000 new coronavirus-related domains were registered in the past 3 weeks, and 17% of them were found to be malicious or suspicious. So how do you look at all these statistics and look at security from your enterprise's perspective, keeping SASE in mind? Yes, sir.
Absolutely, Yash. So to be very honest, in the whole dynamic of technology, let's try to identify which is the weakest link. So trust me, the weakest link is the human. And with this pandemic, where like COVID-19 came, like work from anywhere concept certainly has increased that. So the way like Anuj said or Vamsi said, like identity has become very, very important part. And till the time like you are crossing your gateway, you are within your perimeter network. I'm sure like there are people who are watching you, what you are doing on the system on a day-to-day stuff. But when you have been asked to do the similar kind of work from anywhere, at the time you crosses that perimeter. So certainly like, okay, when you need to work for office or maybe like for certain things like which might be organization related application, then certainly at that time like you connect to VPN. But before connecting to VPN, what exactly you are doing on the internet? So there might be like many personal things we do it, right? It could be just a bill payment. It could be something similar to that. I mean, all those things, what an individual is doing on the system stays on the endpoint. And SASE basically connects those small gaps, which is actually a bigger gap. Because I always say like, SASE is something like which is bringing complete secure end-to-end environment across the platform. So like wherever you have SD-WAN or maybe like a perimeter network, probably you might be secured enough because you might have put that much of, watch or that much of visibility related to what a person is doing, or you are restricting that person. But when the same concept goes from work from anywhere on any device, at that time you loses that advantage. And that's where like
Sure.
SASE comes into the picture, where your complete the architecture and the common policy exist on the cloud itself, and it directly interacts with the nearby edge location to the endpoint, and ensures that like every individuals get the equal kind of experience or similar kind of experience, and
Sure.
you have the end-to-end visibility of all the end
Great.
devices.
Sure, sir. Sure. Let me now go over to the two gentlemen who are expanding the market for SASE, Vamsi and Anuj. Vamsi, for an enterprise technology leader to leverage SASE, what kind of an infrastructure is required? Your thoughts on this? Because today budget is really hard to come by. So in such a situation, is it too infrastructure intensive? Is it too capex intensive? Your views here, Vamsi.
So honestly, the beauty of SASE is it's very modular, right? So depending on the organization, depending on the existing architectures, you could do with zero new infrastructure investment to probably very minimal infrastructure investments, right? The reason I say that is depending on the maturity curve of technology where you are, if you're already on the cloud somewhere and you've got a bunch of your applications residing in cloud, you probably have a bunch of your low-lying security as well as infrastructure requirements already met with, right? Jay was just mentioning in terms of making the endpoint, once you check the posture of that endpoint, once you identify the user, you allow that endpoint to connect to the nearest edge, and then you allow it access going forward from there, right? So that's the point. How do you make that speak to the nearest edge? And once it speaks to the nearest edge, from there on, it is entirely on the internet, which doesn't really require any infrastructure investment per se. To paraphrase what SASE essentially does also is, you're bringing the user and the device validation closer to the user, and you're taking security closer to the application. So you're trying to make that pipe in between from the user and the device that connects to the application. You're making that as much clean as possible. Now, in addition to that, there may be other needs. Like, for example, if you're a very networking heavy kind of an organization where there's a lot of IO that happens, you still got a lot of applications in your data centers. Maybe there's needs for us to look at how do you look at a software-defined networking concept and essentially expand on that paradigm as well. So the answer is not a 0 or a 1 kind of an answer, but it is very, very easy to look at where you are right now and then determine your investments that are required to be ready for SASE. It could be 0 as well if you're a very forward-looking organization and have got investments in the cloud at this point in time.
Sure. Over to you, Anuj.
So my point of view is pretty much similar to what Vamsi said. Again, see, I think it's a shift in the way we are consuming technology. So the more shift happens, you will see that investments are directly proportionate to what kind of business unit or what kind of business process you're shifting and how they're connecting. I feel that we will see that in the next 6, 9, 10 months, a lot of traditional business processes might get digitalized, or a lot of way where we were looking at data center heavy solutions and everything hitting your data center will actually start moving to the cloud. And the moment that transition starts happening, SASE becomes extremely, complementary. And then there is no need of any huge capex or huge assets that you need to acquire. So now again, it all depends on how business really adapts these technologies in terms of the future looking. And then on that basis, how we implement SASE. My other point in this is security definitely will call for a lot more investments, because now suddenly all the millions of dollars that you had spent for securing your office environment or your core data center has suddenly become borderless, has suddenly moved from, from that ring fence way to completely in the open in the cloud. So I think security investments will definitely be required. Now, again, there's a difference between, the cost of mitigating the risk versus the risk, right? On that basis is the call organizations will take.
Sure, Anuj. Let me go back to Mr. Milind now. Milind, sir, like Anuj just said, there'll be a lot of focus on information security. So you will be in the hot seat going forward. Sir, how do you see SASE obviously is going to redefine network and security architecture? What benefits do you think would accrue from such an architecture, such a model?
So before answering this particular question, I would like to make the audience aware of the reality. Today also in many government organizations, in many semi-government organizations, certain banks don't allow certain functions to be done from outside the office. For that sake, even they have secured rooms which have access control. You have to go inside that room, you have to use specified machine to connect to certain servers and do that function. Now, looking at the current change, those all functions cannot be on standstill for 2-3 months. They have to be done remotely. Where there was no trust in the earlier security measures and controls that were there in place, and it required that the administrator has to visit the office, go and sit in a particular terminal and do that function. Suddenly, that whole function is going outside the office to administrator's home using his own device. Like someone said, bring your own device. I have coined the term use your own device. You can't bring a device. You have to be where you are. You have to use your own device from wherever you are. So instead of bring your own device, now it is use your own device. Using your own device, if you are connecting to a system which otherwise was not exposed to anything else but a wired terminal or a very secured room terminal, suddenly requires a very different kind of control. If there was trust enough, or if there was confidence enough on the way the authentication used to happen for remote users, then this mandate, this kind of physical control that you have to come to office and operate from certain terminal would never have been there. I believe SASE-like architecture would come handy to enhance that particular control, which otherwise was not enough for people to operate remotely. Second thing, I feel that SASE is going to be very, very useful when it comes to talking about multi-layer. Now, if I am going to use my own device, definitely my organization is asking me to use my own device, but it won't allow that device to connect exactly the way how it would allow its own laptop or device, which is allotted by the organization to the employee. There are lot many controls like USBs are disabled, admin rights are taken off, disk level encryption is implemented, which you cannot mandate on my own device, because my device could be shared between my family members and they may want to download software, they may want to copy certain things. You cannot take away my USB and all those things. So now it becomes necessary that you have to have a multi-layer approach. So as I see how the things will move is, my device would have a small container which would have an office environment. Outside that container, the things can be insecure. So zero trust. I don't trust your device. I'll give you a small container to which I trust. Now that small container capacity wise is not good enough to complete all the functions. So it will have to have a connection to some virtual desktop. So there will be another layer, VDI. And then that VDI cannot be on-prem, because how can you arrange for so many VDIs on-prem? You have to have a heavy infrastructure. You have to have a dynamically allocated infrastructure, so that VDI will go to cloud. So there is one location, your home, where you have a device of your own with a container given by the office. There will be another location that is cloud, where you would have a VDI, and there will be a third location which will be DMZ of your organization, where you will land from that VDI. And the fourth location is the secured servers, where you would actually do the function. Now, I feel that SASE-like architecture would probably bring in an uniformity of security controls across all these 4 layers. And that is where it is going to be very, very useful. But the challenge is that there is a lot of sink-in investment that organizations have already done. There's a lot of security appliances, there are a lot of authentication mechanisms. Someone said about multi-factor authentication, which is being used. People use open source, people use licensed products. All these things are already there. You cannot say the new architecture is coming, so why don't you, simply dump everything that you have done and go in for this new architecture? So there is a need for this new architecture to gel well with already implemented architecture. And that is where I feel there would be a challenge.
Sure, sir. Talking about challenges, Puneet ma'am, what do you feel could be the challenges in implementing SASE, and how do you think they can be overcome? Interoperability for one, Mr. Milind just talked about. Anything else that comes to your mind?
So interoperability is something which is definitely need of the hour, where we want to talk about legacy applications. There is something which we talk about, the old architecture which is running the business. It is more of revenue driven, and suddenly you feel that there is a new architecture which has to have a balance, and they have to basically interoperable with both the things. There is the new normal, there is an old normal. So basically it's an old traditional idea or the new age. They have to sense and make a business collaboration together. So I think the challenge is more in terms of where we need to focus more and more in re-architecting, which is like, where there has to be something which is business as usual is running, right? We cannot disturb the current environment because it is more of a transactional lead. But at the same time, there has to be something which is a new way where, the BAU, the processes has to run right now, and there has to be a new strategy which has to run hand in hand, which is like the new architecture of the new strategy, which has to be after a certain point of times have to be operationalized as well.
Sure.
It has to be
Sure.
brought into a convergence at some point
Right.
of time. So maybe an incremental rollouts, maybe an increment beta versions of things. So the complete reprioritization of IT and its benefits has to be brought into the business. It has to be both ways.
Right. Anuj, what's your take on this? What kind of challenges could CIOs face in their journey to SASE? And is it interoperable with the existing infrastructure?
So I completely echo what Milind sir said, that, today, a lot of organizations have invested a lot of money on security, and they continue to do that. And suddenly you come with a new framework and you say, what, we can't use any of the old technology. Now we need to go the new way. It doesn't work that way. And especially, again, interoperability is again, it's a lot to do with the way you change the way you do the process. So what we are seeing is organizations are actually taking a complete U-turn in terms of what ethos or what they believe. No, this process can only be done this way. And suddenly you are at a change saying that no, it has to do a complete U-turn and we will do it the other way, which we thought was the most insecure way. But it is happening. So I feel there's a lot of changes that will happen. Acceptance of technology will take place. It will take some time. And again, it all depends on how deeply are you invested with on-prem technologies or on-cloud technologies. And then you start doing this journey. So it's not going to be an instant journey. It's going to be a slow journey. At some places, like, someone who's deeply invested on cloud, for them, it's a complete go-go. There is nothing that they need to do. They just need to turn the tap on. So it again depends on how the organization's architectures are structured, right? That will define the next 6 months of SASE adoption.
Sure. Vamsi, do you echo Anuj's thoughts here that it's going to be a slow journey?
Yeah, it's slow and fast depending on what the business warrants, right? So there are definitely sunken investments that could be repurposed. And I'm sure pretty much every organization is smart enough, has a bunch of smart people, has a bunch of smart vendors that they work with on how do you repurpose existing investments that can cater to your immediate journey going forward as well in the new normals. But then there's also going to be some sunken investments which do not just make sense. If you're re-architecting your business process, maybe the old way of doing stuff, you have to do away with some of that. It's a baggage that will only slow you down. In some cases, it's possible. So there are necessities that you have to fulfill. There's going to be a detailed understanding of where you are, the way you need to get to, and then try and derive a strategy. And that could be based on SASE. It could be based on SASE plus a combination of zero trust. It could be based on SASE plus zero trust plus existing investments. And that's how the definition of your future path will be. But I think, where organizations are right now, I think they're very, very well positioned to kind of start embracing some of the new normal stuff. The beauty of SASE is it gives you a modular way of future proofing as you go forward, as you start making future purchase decisions as well. So I think that's a very interesting concept right now.
Sure, Vamsi. We are fast running out of time. So I think one final question to all the panelists before we wrap up the session. I'll start with Mr. Mukesh Jain. Sir, what are some of the best practices that come to your mind when we talk about implementing, leveraging SASE in your enterprise? I know it's a long journey. A lot of CIOs have just started moving on it, and a lot of CIOs are still contemplating. But what are some best practices that come to your mind if you have to adopt such an architecture or a model?
I think it goes on to it is straightforward, right? Because when you're introducing anything new, as Anuj have said and Vamsi have mentioned already, you don't have to re-architect the current one. So just start small, look at the results, and then expand it to all the applications. I think that will be my approach,
Sure.
the best practice, I would say.
Sure. Mr. Milan, your take, sir, in just a couple of sentences.
Yeah, the best practice here is to implement SASE in spirit. It should not be implemented just because it is a new framework, new architecture, and you want to go out on the panel discussion, say we have also implemented SASE. It should be implemented because it has to be implemented in spirit. You start slow, you start small, but you implement it in spirit. Let the organization and stakeholders see the advantage of it and then expand seamlessly. That is what I would like to say over here.
Right. So walk the talk, basically. Right, sir. Miss Kohli, ma'am.
So that just don't make the technology work, make it awesome.
Great. Sure, ma'am. Mayank.
Yeah, I think the way I see it, the key best practice that I think would really come in handy here is be very clear with what you want to accomplish with this technology. With any new technology, there is generally a lot of hype, and some of the things that you've not been able to accomplish earlier are kind of considered to be, as the possible mitigants through the new technology. So be very clear that this is not going to be a panacea. It is going to have its own set of pitfalls that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of. So be realistic in terms of your expectations. And I think I echo what Mukesh and Mr. Milind just mentioned. Start small, and then kind of implement and expand upon it. But I think most importantly, be very clear with what this is going to accomplish and what this is not going to, get done for you, because otherwise it will cause a lot of heartburn subsequently.
Sure, definitely. Mr. Sharma, one or two best practices, whatever comes to your mind, sir.
I think I would echo all the gentleman has already said. Similar way, like see your real use case, and then start on this adopting this. This is adoption. The best part in SASE is like it doesn't specifically ask for a fixed amount of investment. You can start small and then analyze that, closely track that. And in case if you see that benefit, specifically take a look of what exactly at this moment your infrastructure demands. In case if you might have done a refresh of your existing perimeter stuff, probably that's where we all need to be careful, because like we all focus on ROI stuff. And then slowly wherever like small use cases you see, get started with that. And slowly, if you see the benefit, start adopting. I mean, at this moment, trust me, like we are also trying to do a POC just to understand the technology better. At this moment, I won't be saying like, okay, we had implemented or we are on the path of implementation. We are still trying to collect the knowledge enough, which can help us decide whether this is the technology we should be adopting or not.
Sure, sir. Vamsi.
So I agree with all the comments that I just made. I think the answer lies in the obvious. So once you understand your business very well, you know what are the things that are immediately required for new rollouts, or maybe some new go-to-market motion that you may be building. That may be a good point to start. Start small. One size doesn't fit all. So obviously one of your processes may be sufficient to start off, and then it gives you a bunch of learning, and then you can expand. The beauty again, like Mr. Sharma just said, is this is not something that you'll have to do organization-wide right away. You can start with one process and you can optimize it, and then you can look at an enterprise-wide strategy as you go forward and make it work for you, and make it really awesome. To Ms. Puneet's point, right?
Right. Make it awesome. Great. Anuj, final thoughts from you before we wrap up the session?
As they say, life is 10% about what happens to us and 90% about how we react to it, right? And in this situation today, I think it's more about how we are reacting to it. From a SASE point of view, I would say land and expand, right? Just get your bearings with a very small instance and then see how you want to go about it.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And Ms. Kohli, of course, that's all we have time for. I would like to thank all our panelists for throwing light on the various aspects of SASE and the advantages that its implementation brings. I hope this session will go a long way in helping the attendees to simplify the adoption of the SASE architecture, to support the needs of edge computing, business transformation, and workforce mobility for their respective enterprises. I would once again like to thank all our panelists for their wonderful insights, and to all the attendees for sparing time for this session. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Kohli. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.